Hey, everybody, this is Tom Sega from Duluth Pack, and this is the Duluth Pack podcast, Leader of the Pack. You know what? Our special guest today, folks, is a real leader in his field. We have Chris Brochu, who is an American actor and songwriter. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh gosh, I'm really excited. I want to learn what goes into your industry. You know, we're a lot of us who are out here. We're in a business where you have a widget that you sell or make and sell and all this, but your industry is very different. So I'm really interested. So I'm going to be quiet here so we can get into talking about you and really start early on and then all the way up to your career today. So Chris, tell us just about where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
So I was born in Tennessee. My father was in the Army, and so I lived there for just the first about 3-ish years of my life. And then my childhood was North Carolina. Like I said, my father was in the Army, so we moved a lot. So it was basically Tennessee, North Carolina, Florida, and then California, and now I live in New Mexico. So that's my childhood was mostly North Carolina.
Awesome. And you know, as a was it considered a army brat at the time, I
Yeah,
guess, is the old, maybe
still.
that's not even, I don't even know if that's politically correct anymore, but we'll go with it anyway. Moving around a lot. How was
Yeah.
that for, new schools, making new friends, different things like that? How did that work in and did that play a pivotal part in your career choice?
I think so. I think were always moving around, so having to make new friends and kind of build new relationships was a part of the game. Um, Also, a lot of the times, for a majority of my childhood, we did a lot of homeschooling as well. So that was definitely beneficial when it came to moving and education, but also when it came to making friends and things like that. It was mostly sports. I played hockey and baseball and some basketball when I was younger. Hockey was my main sport though. Um, and then like social functions like church and stuff like that when I was growing up.
So, Chris, you obviously have a passion for music and you have a passion for acting. Where did that start and how did you get that bug?
It's a good question. I think music maybe came first. I always loved listening to all kinds of music. I was very sheltered growing up, so as I grew up and when I was a teenager, I would always try and sneak CDs from all of my friends that I wasn't necessarily allowed to listen to, and I would just kind of sample all of my friends. And I never really knew bands and things like that, but I knew sounds, and so I was very interested in sounds. So music was, I think, came first, and playing guitar came first because um I had a guy in the church I was in growing up, and he was the youth leader, and he was playing guitar, and I always thought guitar was one of the coolest instruments. And so he ended up giving me a couple guitar lessons and went with me to buy my first guitar, which is actually sitting in the corner. And it was kind of just that need for expression on that side of things was, I think, the first in my life. And then acting kind of, I very much fell into it, or I feel like the universe kind of pulled me in certain directions, and I've tried to meet those opportunities to the best of my ability. And so then acting kind of came later, and a passion for it also came later.
Career wise, then the music route first or the acting route first?
Career wise, acting. I was in some bands when I was younger doing music, and that was kind of, I wanted to do that. That was my vision, but acting hit first, and I just kind of started pursuing that because it was a whole nother art form and adventure in and of itself. Obviously, the art form differs from music, kind of different parts of the brain, but also the adventure aspect of it, acting at least, um, was something that music at the time wasn't able to scratch that itch.
So, Chris, what steps did you have to take from the standpoint of education, schooling, classes to take off on the acting route?
It just kind of differed. I started out with an acting coach, And I think when it comes to the arts in general, you have to kind of try out a bunch of different teachers and see what methods are being used and how is creativity encouraged. And so I ended up finding a acting coach, Howard Fine, in Los Angeles, and he was the first acting teacher I ever worked with that really gave me a knowledge of what the craft was, all the different steps in forming a character, and when you're and gathering the information when you're reading a script. So he was the first one where I actually like sat down and really started to understand the method. Because before that, I was very much I obviously knew how to memorize my lines and things of that nature, but I was working at a certain depth. And whenever I started going to acting classes, I found that you could truly, in that art form, go as deep as you want to. So it's an interesting path thus far.
You know, Chris, you hear a lot about struggling actors earlier in their career, and you know, it's just getting a break or a wow moment in your career. You're talking about teachers that you went through, coaches that you went through and found one. You know, can you expand upon, you know, what did that coach hit upon for you that then got you to go further and then start getting pieces or an agent? I mean, how does that even work? Your business is so different than what
Sure.
we might, you know, so many listeners might think is, how does that all work?
So we'll just go to, I guess, agent and manager before that. So if we'll go all the way to the beginning, my first manager wasn't necessarily the greatest manager, but that relationship got us out to Los Angeles, to which after that relationship fell apart, I found my manager after that, who I've been with for now 16 years. Like we're family. So when it comes to, I was talking to a student the other day about, okay, how do you get an agent or a manager? Thankfully, that was through a friend. They had also switched managers and really enjoyed my current manager. And so I went and had a meeting, and that's just how that worked. A lot of it has to do with relationship and connections and things like that. And so that was just an actor, friend of ours. But the main thing is you have to find somebody who believes in you. My manager believed in me before I believed in myself. She saw something that I didn't see. And it was her kind of confidence in me that really pushed me. And she has then, from that point, set me up with the different agents that I've had. And I'm just very grateful for that relationship. I think those relationships, they can come to you, but also it's just as easy as, like with other jobs, not when it came to acting. Whenever I go and try and find something, it's just about asking, you know, hey, are you looking for anybody? Emailing, cold calling, whatever it may be. And I would always go with manager first, because if you have somebody who's really fighting for you, then you can. It's a heck of a lot easier to start moving forward.
Chris, can you explain to us the process of for the lack of better terms, trying out for a part,
Sure.
in whether it's a play, a TV show, or a
Sure.
movie? And I believe you've done all of the above.
Yeah.
And are they all different when you go to try out for a part or audition for a part, or how does that work?
I like to think I like to say no. I treat everything as the same. The process is the same. It's all about so I tell my students, I teach acting to beginners, mostly 7 to about 18, and I have some older students that I coach as well. But more than anything, it's about when you get a script for the first time, when you get a scene for the first time, read it like you're reading a book. Just let the imagery come to you. Don't put any expectations upon it, and just let it imprint upon you. And then once you've let it imprint upon you, you go and you basically dissect everything. You're a detective. Words, phrases. Why are these phrases here? What's the point of them? And then there's questions that I walk my students through. The method of it. It's essentially, what does your character want? What is in the way? How do they overcome the obstacle? You know, and so as specific as you can get about those questions, and as vulnerable as you allow yourself to be within the truth of those emotions, that is the only thing I care about, because the outcome will be the same. The outcome, it either works or it doesn't. So I don't worry about how it comes out or how it ends up. It's why am I doing this? And as long as I'm putting in the effort and I'm not trying to fool myself to think I have prepared when I haven't. I'm pretty good about that in my mind. That's the only way it allows me to be vulnerable in these moments. So whether it be a play, TV show, or movie, process is all the same. It's very much like bow hunting you were talking about earlier, right? I do some archery. I haven't gotten into the hunting yet. I'm not proficient enough, but it's the same movement every time, and you have to trust that preparation leads you to your mark, if that makes sense.
So it's kind of muscle memory for your brain.
That's right.
Can you walk us through an example of when it really obviously worked for you and you got the part, but also where you put yourself into a part and it may not be what the studio or the producer was looking for, and you don't end up getting the part? Can you give us examples of that? Because it's, for most of us, it's very foreign.
Sure. I mean, I can, the one time where it didn't work, there's one specific thing that kind of jumps into my mind where I read this scene, and this was back when I was still living in Los Angeles and we were going in for auditions, because it's very different now, and that might be something we can get into later. And I just remember reading this character and had a very strong perspective about it. And it was actually kind of the opposite. And it's really the only time that it's happened to me, where it was the opposite of what they were really thinking about. But they kind of said, it was a strong choice, but it wasn't our choice. And that's fine. Another kind of metaphor that I like to use is every time I do an audition, it's essentially casting director saying, hey, paint a mountain. And everybody's going to paint a mountain different. It's going to be different times a day. There's going to be different trees. There's going to be different elevation, whatever your perspective of the mountain is. And I paint that mountain and I give that to them, and it either works for what they're looking for, or they can go back and be like, oh, remember that he painted that mountain that one time, and that might fit. That perspective might fit here. So that was a strong perspective that didn't fit. And then there was a film I did called, it's now called Recon. It was called Peace originally. And it's a World War II piece. And it was with a producer that I had worked with before, and they had tried to cast this not a main character, it was a part of the ensemble, called Ash. And they had done all the auditions, and my producer finally was like, dude, there's this role, read this role and let me know what you think, and if you like it, put it on tape tonight. We got to move on this. So I ended up really going for it, and he was from Boston, and just really worked on the accent, read the script, got it done that evening, and that worked for me. I ended up booking that, and it was one of my favorite roles and movies to be a part of. It felt very special. And so I guess those are two extreme examples of that process, whether it being the right, like I said, picture, painting, your perspective, the opposite. Yeah, those very polar opposites.
Sure, absolutely. So folks, today our special guest is Chris Brochu. He's an American actor and songwriter, and we'll get into the songwriting part of it and some of your songs later. But man, I have all kinds of questions here, Chris, on your industry. It's pretty cool. So tell us, from like a time frame perspective, you're doing a play, and
Sure.
that's live, right? That's not film. That's live.
Yep.
So how do you prepare differently from doing a play to a television part to an actual movie? Did you know that America's original manufacturer of canoe and kayak stabilizers was recently featured on Fox and Friends? Spring Creek Manufacturing was recognized on Fox News for being a leader in the Made in the USA industry for their top quality truck racks, the world's best camp saw, and their assortment of water sports equipment, including stabilizers for canoes, kayaks, and stand-up paddleboards, as well as their canoe seats, and motor mounts. Enjoy an exclusive 15% off, yes, 15% off your next online order at springcreek.com with the code LEADER15, that is LEADER 15. Exclusions apply. Now, back to the podcast.
So like I said earlier, the process is very similar. I treat it the same every time, but I suppose when you're working on a play, there is this heightened sense of no safety net. When you're doing a play, for instance, if you're doing a movie, right? If you're in the middle of a scene and you forget your lines, it's kind of no harm, no foul if you either say line and there's somebody there could give you the line, and then you can jump back a couple lines and keep going, right? We can edit. That's all good. If that happens in a play, you're very much dependent upon your scene partner, if they know what's happening, to kind of help you out of that hole. If you're by yourself, it's literally you and you. And there have been moments where there's that kind of that tinge of, oh my gosh, do I know where I am right now in the dialogue? And I don't know what it is from my childhood or life in general. I mean, knock on wood, I'm relatively peaceful in those moments. I try not to let too much of that anxiety kind of come through. So I guess the difference is the stakes of the performance are much greater when you're doing theater.
Chris, how about time frames from a production of the time frame of a production from a play to a TV to a movie, and maybe TV and movie are closer together. I'm not sure. Help us out there from the standpoint of, live production. I hope I'm asking this right, but time frames of preparing for a play versus you shoot a TV show and it's every week there's an episode, and then
Sure.
all of a sudden you're doing a movie like the one you were talking about earlier.
Right. So truly it depends on budget. So, if you have, most of the times it's a lower budget, and the shoots have been getting shorter and shorter. So for instance, I think Recon, maybe we did it in a month. So that's a month of, and I probably had we'll say call the whole thing a month from the time that I had the audition to the time we finished the film. We'll give it a month's time frame. So within that month, obviously as soon as I realize I have the part, I'm fully engrossed in the script, and that will happen up until maybe a day or two before filming, and then they'll give you a schedule of what you're filming. And so once I have the schedule, then I'll focus on those scenes in order of how they're being filmed. But a lot of the times in production, they'll move scenes around and things like that. So unless you've taken that time at the beginning to really break down the script and analyze what's going on, you can get lost in that shuffle of production. So we'll say that movie a month. We'll say the last play that I did was actually a musical that some friends and I wrote, and that was, oh my gosh, I don't even know. That's a different story as well, because that was us creating it ourselves. So maybe it took a month to maybe 2 months to finish the whole thing, and then from that maybe 3 months total from starting it to finishing it when it came to performing. So that's a little bit of a longer time frame. And TV shows, unless you're a series regular, the person that you see every single episode, I did a guest star, which is kind of like a heightened role on an episode on a show called Station 19 at the beginning of the year. And so I had maybe 2 weeks from the time that I got in LA to the time I finished it. So it all depends.
Wow. So it's crazy. I'm thinking as you're talking here, and I'm like, your memorization has to be off the charts, because I know that if you put a script in front of me and I read it 22 times, I'm not going to remember it. I'm just
I don't know. Do you sing songs
well,
by yourself?
not very well.
That's okay. It's the same thing though. It is true. I think I think when we let any new thing, whether it be a trade or an art form or anything, kind of overwhelm us. How about this? Anytime you worry about mastery over mystery, you're gonna get worked up. You're gonna get in that space. I'm more interested in the mystery of it. I'm here to absorb the information and do my best about it. As soon as you think you're gonna start master something, you already have an expectation of the end result. And I feel like it can bring anxiety and also limit you, if that makes any sense.
Well, you know, that's interesting. You just said that because yeah, we all can memorize a song, right? You know,
Yeah.
we listen to it, we play it over in our head, we start singing it and stuff like that. Did you find that your music background helped you then in memorization of scripts? Because of that, I guess as a layman, I've never thought of that before.
I think the songwriting helps from the dynamic aspect. So, you know, you'll have a song, if it takes you a place, you know, it'll have peaks and valleys, right? A good song. Same with a good scene. It'll have peaks and valleys. So I think being sensitive to that is something that helps me. But I don't know. I think they definitely help each other out. I can tell stories pretty well in a short time frame in a song, and it just takes a little bit longer with a TV show or a movie or a play or whatever it may be. So it's I'm sure they help each other out. They are just, I think about them differently.
Interesting. Yeah, it's crazy because I've always thought about how do people memorize all these lines
Yeah.
and you move from one and then you're on to the next and the next and the next. And obviously you study ahead of time, but when you kind of hit on something that I've never thought of when you're talking about the music is that, hey, Tom, you memorize a song, right?
Exactly.
You sing a song. How did you memorize that?
That's right, because you had no expectation. That's the point. Your heart was open. You were like vulnerable, and you just allowed that song to imprint upon you. And you memorize things because you remember them, and you remember them because it meant something to you. And so it's just about trying to be as sensitive as you can to whatever medium you're working on.
After you do a scene, then do you kind of purge that out
Yeah.
of memorization and you're just
Yep.
moving forward with the rest of it?
Yep.
Wow.
That's exactly right. It's actually hard for me. Sometimes you'll do a movie, right? And then maybe editing and everything. And once they figure out the release date, it's better to do it. It might happen like 2 years after we've shot the film. So what I'll have to do is before we start doing press, I'll have to go back, I'll read the script just to make sure that I'm fresh with all the pertinent details, because as soon as I'm done with it, I'm done with it. And that's very much how my brain works. I'm hyper focused on it when it's happening. That's why I really, really enjoy movies, or a really fun role in a TV show, is because in a movie, you can be very hyper focused for X amount of time, a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is. And then once it's done, it's like the finish line and the race is over. You know, your work is done. It's in everybody else's hands now. And you just, I have peace about it.
Oh, that's crazy. Chris, before we go on, and I want to talk about some of the pieces you've been in movies and TV, but you had mentioned about audition changes over time on, you know, and I don't know if this is a pre 2019 thing when all of a sudden, oh, everything changed for all of us. But what changed from the beginning of your career till now, and how?
I guess when it comes to the auditioning process, different things have changed. So we'll just go with pre-COVID, post-COVID. Pre-COVID was a lot of, and I was living in LA. And if you had an audition, you had to go to the audition spot. So that's whatever, maybe an hour, hour and a half in traffic. You find the spot. It's another hour to go do the audition. It's another hour, hour and a half and back in traffic. So half of your day is already done for this one audition. And there is a positive of being in the room there's some sort of energy or connection that is innately lost, I think, when we do things digitally. So I do miss that aspect of it. But post COVID, and one of the reasons why I moved away from Los Angeles was because I knew that auditioning wasn't going to be like that for at least 3 years. And who knows if it'll honestly ever go back to that way. And for me, I'm fine with it because it means I don't have to live in the big city. I can act from wherever I'm at because I've got a whole setup in my office and I can come here, knock it out, and then, I'm on with my day. So that is how it has changed the technical side of things. But there's a lot of stuff that hasn't changed. I'm still auditioning, except for, I suppose, relationships, as you audition. Like I say, another thing that I tell my kids is, kids that I coach, you're never just auditioning for that audition. You're auditioning for every single audition that casting director ever casts, that director ever does, that producer ever does. And so I have a certain standard, even when it comes to auditioning, that I try and push myself toward, because that's the kind of ideal that I put out. I want to make sure that I'm showing up to the best of my ability to this moment. And so that they can, again, even if it's not what they want, they at least know who they're, not who they're dealing with, but like what I'm bringing to the table, my work ethic.
You may not get that part, but if you leave a good impression, that director may say down the road, hey, bring that guy back in again. This Chris guy, he didn't get that part, but I think he'd be good for this next one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Always be selling, right?
Yeah, and if you show up, well, and that's kind of I know we don't talk a lot about the actual packs in the show, but that, I feel like that's the premise behind Duluth as well, where create something of quality, let it become an heirloom, let it last, let it speak for itself. And I try, and that's my goal. I don't claim to hit it every single time, but that's at least the thing that I aim for, is let it speak for itself.
So let's talk about some of the works that you've been involved in. Soul Surfer, NCIS Los Angeles, CSI New York, Shameless, Recon, Station 19. Tell us a little bit about all of those, and how are they different and how are they the same?
So I don't know, they're all different in the execution of the same art form. Like I said, the thing that never changes is the process. Same thing with somebody, again, we can go back to bags that, it's the same process every single time you're creating this bag. Same thing with somebody that's like a parachuter, right? Or a free diver. You pack your parachute the exact same time every single time. Process doesn't change. But when you jump out of that plane, when you jump onto a new set, it's all about flowing with whatever's happening on that set. Sometimes it might be hectic. Sometimes it might be very chill and everybody's very respectful. It just depends. You never know. So I guess, let's see. Shameless was one of my favorite. It was a smaller reoccurring role, but one of my favorite aspects of that set is it reflected the same type of ethos that I have when it comes to working. Normally, when you get to a set, you're shooting X amount of scenes in a day. Those X amount of scenes come on these little things called sides. They're like this big. They're little pieces of printer paper, and it kind of breaks down what's happening, and you have the lines on it for the day. Everybody has them in the trailer, whatever. Shameless, they do not give you that. You better come to work ready to work. And I love that. I love that. So that ethos on set was something I very much enjoyed. Station 19 was a blessing because it was the first show of this year before everything. We have a writer strike going on right now, and after the writer strike, there's going to be other strikes as well. So I'm fully prepared to not do any filming this year. We shall just have to kind of see how that all goes. And then the last movie that I did was this film called Zero Contact. We shot it during the pandemic. And what was different about that, or rather the two films that are going to follow that, we actually went to Antarctica at the end of 2021, and we shot there for a couple of days, which was completely, seems absurd to even say it now. Had my Duluth Pack with me the whole time. It's been all the way.
God bless you.
All...
So it withstood the cold temperatures, you're telling
Sure
me.
did. I got the photos to prove it. I'll have to post them again.
You need to do that. So how do you get to Antarctica?
You fly into oh my gosh, where did we go? I think I went from Albuquerque to Texas, from Texas to Santiago in Chile in South America. Then we go from down there to Punta Arenas, and then from there you take a big O 747 and you just go south. And so we were on the South American side of Antarctica. I guess every major company has like a little slice of the pie, and so that's where we were. Yeah, completely, just completely surreal and absurd and interesting and fascinating.
How do you film in an environment like that?
It's it's challenging. We did a lot of the stuff we did was exterior shots, and so big, vast frames with us just kind of like traversing it in different ways. And we did one audio, maybe even two audio scenes, and it was this very emotional scene. And it was the odd moment where there was just no sound at all. And we were just in the middle of this barren ice landscape. And the sound guy was like, that's the best sound I've ever recorded. It was just so quiet. Now it's not like that all the time. The winds definitely come through and can rip through the camp. But for that one moment, it seemed like the nature was on our side for that shoot. It was a really rewarding shoot.
So how cold did it get? How long were you in Antarctica?
I think it was probably, I think it was 13 days. We got delayed because of weather. How cold it got? It definitely got much below zero, especially whenever the wind comes through. But when we were there, it was 24 hours of daylight, so it's not as extreme, right? As obviously when it's 24 hours of just darkness. And then we were there during supposedly that year's the worst windstorm, and it got over, I think, like 120 miles an hour or something like that during the night. And so our tents were just bowing back and forth every once in a while, but I slept great, you know.
So what kind of accommodations do you have?
We're in a tent. We're in a little caterpillar tent, two cots in each tent, and it honestly wasn't terrible. I really enjoyed it. The sleeping bags we had were, all up to grade, and it had our moisture wicking wool. I mean, it's pretty cozy.
Holy catfish. And tell us about like Soul Surfer. Obviously taken in Hawaii. Do you go to Hawaii to film for that?
Yeah, we did. So Soul Surfer is about Bethany Hamilton, who had her arm bitten off by a shark, and she is still a world-class surfer to this day. She's a very, very strong woman. And so yeah, we went to North Shore. We were on Oahu, and we got to meet the family. I played Timmy Hamilton, which was her older brother, one of her older brothers. And so I got to hang out with him. I got to hang out with the whole family. It was one of those surreal experiences. I booked it. I remember there's been a couple of these times where I'll read a script and I will claim the role. This is mine. This needs to be mine. And I'll book it. It's a weird thing. It doesn't happen all the time, but there have been a couple occasions where I'll read it that I have to have this, and then I will end up actually booking it. And that was one of those. And I booked it, and after I booked it, that's when they said, "Oh my gosh, Helen Hunt's gonna be your mom, and Dennis Quaid's gonna play your father." I was like, "This is This is very surreal, but let's absolutely go do this.
For real.
It is. It was very. It's little moments like that that kind of gave me permission to keep moving forward in my career. There are a couple, and they still happen, which is why I'm still pursuing it. It's a very uh, feast and famine. You know, the life of an artist. I don't obviously get to act all the time, so I have other little side hustles and professions that I'm learning, and yeah. So Soul Surfer was one of those kind of surreal, one of the first surreal moments of, oh my gosh, I get to do this with people that really do this, and it was huge, huge blessing.
How is it when, obviously, probably intimidating first walking in with somebody like Helen Hahn, and then how is it dealing with people like that, on set versus offset?
Me personally, I show up the same way every single time. I don't know. I will go out of my way to be friendly and nice to you. I don't expect anything back from you. I'm here to do a really good job, and I don't. I try not to make assumptions. All I do is I try and be respectful and engaging and eager, and see kind of where that takes me. And uh, also being on a set like that, the universe kind of gives you permission to be there. You know, you were chosen to be here, and so that kind of gives you a little bit of validation, a little bit of permission to, okay, you're enough, you're okay, you're supposed to be here, you were chosen to be here by the people who you could be intimidated by, but they want you here, so just show up, do good.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty humbling. Chris, what are the biggest challenges of being an actor?
It's the feast and famine aspect of it. I think for anybody that wants to be an actor, just also everybody says plan B. I don't necessarily have a plan B, but I have things that I enjoy doing in the meantime. I teach acting, so I do that a couple days a week, and I'm also learning carpentry. So I've been trying to pick up different trades as well, and kind of absorb information of that sense as also.
Chris, let's talk a little bit about your coaching of
Sure.
other students. First of all, I mean, if people wanted to reach out and have you coach them, how do they find you? What are your handles, website, all those good things?
So you could absolutely find me on Instagram, Christopher _M_ Brochu. I should have the little verified check by my name. You can reach out to me there. I have a link on there from my Calendly, which is private coaching sessions. I also teach, I'm starting a acting class Saturday mornings for beginners, 7 to 12 right now. If there tends to be if more people want to be a part of it, then I will create more classes. And I'm also on a site called OutSchool, which is I think it's a site where a lot of homeschooled children can go, and or anybody truly that wants some extracurricular activities. They have everything from teaching kids coding to math to acting or dancing or singing. So I have a couple classes on there that I've created for that website. So that's where you could find me for coaching. Should you be interested, I would love to. If acting is of interest to you, it would be my pleasure to help you along the journey, because I wish I had somebody to kind of break it down to me when I was when I was their age.
So you kind of from that statement, you learned a lot through the School of Hard Knocks
Yeah.
versus what you're trying to get to other students.
Yeah. And honestly, my main thing that I try and instill in my students is work ethic. Like I've told you, the process doesn't change. It's the same way every single time. So if you can be curious and stay vulnerable, then I just try and instill a work ethic within them that will prepare them for auditions when they get them, or being on set when they are there. I try and give them just permission to explore.
Is this all done digitally, or do you also do in person?
So I started out doing in person, and then COVID, and then it was all digital. And now that I live in New Mexico, I'm actually speaking with a theater out here, and I'll be doing in person out here. But right now it's mostly I teach classes on Fridays, and then I teach classes Saturday mornings. And then that's where I keep my acting, is Fridays and Saturdays. Unless I have multiple students that are doing some auditions, and they need coachings, and so I'll make myself available during the evenings, should they need something.
Chris, biggest rewards of being an actor? Well, it's a big, huge paycheck, I would assume, huh?
You know what? When you get it, you can assume you'll get about 50% of it. So just that's a good math equation. And if you work in Canada, you can assume you'll get maybe 25 to 30% of your paycheck. So there's have fun with that math. Yeah, when the paycheck comes through, it is nice, and there's no doubt about that. Especially, I don't want to say at the level I am, but I'm in SAG, which is the Screen Actors Guild, so I am protected on all the projects that I go out for.
Chris, can you tell us about Vampire Diaries? That's one that really resonates with a lot of people. It was very popular.
Yeah.
Your role in that, and how long did that last?
I played a character called Luke Parker in the Vampire Diaries, and that lasted about 14 episodes. It was the longest reoccurring role that I had ever had, and have still ever had. And it was that was another one of those gifts from the acting gods, from the universe. I got that part, and I actually have a video on YouTube that kind of talks about this, so I might as well, it's worth bringing up. That was an interesting time in my life, because I actually found out during the same time that I got diagnosed with skin cancer. So that being in with that production allowed me to have health insurance, which allowed me to navigate that time in my life, all those different kind of surgeries and things that I had to do. And so that was it was almost like I don't know, if to me it felt like a wink from the universe to let me know I was taken care of, because it went from a moment of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in like $250,000 worth of debt because of surgeries and things of that nature. And then within the same week, you're going to be okay. And by the way, you're on this hit TV show. And it was again, one of those surreal, synchronistic moments. And I've had a couple of those in this industry, which again, I feel gives me, or allows me, the perspective to just keep pushing forward. I feel like if I wasn't supposed to be on this path, it would close. And if it ever closes, then so be it. I'll be led somewhere else. But for now, it keeps me on this path. So we will navigate.
So being part of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, then
Yep.
does that bring benefits to you
Yes.
at this time, because you're part of a union, I guess?
Exactly. You pay dues to X amount of how much you make a year, and then it protects you it gives you access to SAG healthcare, which I have this year because of some projects that I got done last year. So yeah, it comes with all kinds of benefits when it all works out. There are definitely some kinks in it, which is, I'm sure, will be talked about when SAG eventually strikes, which will probably happen this year.
Wow. Let's pivot a little bit, because you kind of started out with a music career, and we really haven't delved into that too much, other than you have your guitar near you, and we may ask you to play a little bit here. But tell us more about it. You have some songs, and the crowd goes, "Don't You Want to Wish You Were Us?" "We're Burning Up," "Fade In, Fade Out." Tell us a little bit about that, and the writing and the music and the creative up there, Chris.
Sure. So the ones that you've mentioned are actually from those are from some movies that I did in my early 20s for Disney, called Lemonade Mouth, which was another one of those really I got very lucky with that project back in the day. So all of those, which will be the #1 songs on Spotify, because I am the performer in those tracks. And then the Fade In Fade Out was actually a music video that I did for a friend of mine, which was a fun creative experiment. I think the latest songs that I've put out are a couple demos, and the songs that I guess I would point anybody if they wanted to kind of get a taste of where I'm at right now is you could look at songs on Spotify. One's called Over It, featuring my friend Nikki Lorenzo. And then I have another song called 1-2, which is one of my kind of favorite songs as far as lyrics are concerned. It kind of, I was able to boil down my thoughts about life into a song, and I made it for myself more, just as much as I made it for everybody else. So music, in a nutshell, for me is just my own personal expression. I'm independent. I do it all by myself. I've never been with a label. Every song that I have out, I have funded and produced with other engineers and things like that. So it is my creative expression, and hopefully the goals this year is to record an album. And we'll just kind of see. That's all the equation of time and money. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But it is my therapy, my poetry, a way of making sense of my feelings, and I try and write it in a way that hopefully when you're listening to it or singing to it, it can also connect with you in some way.
Chris, how do you get into that creative gene? And do you have an idea and you say, I have an idea here that I want to write a song about? And how does the process start? And then how do you work your way through it? Do you run into, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, but do you run into a block at times? It's like, okay, I made this far and that all sounds good, but I don't know where to go with it now when you're making music.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And so my process is just being open. That's my main goal, because songs come to me in many different ways. It could be a phrase, and that phrase, okay, so that phrase could be the ending of the chorus, which would be the hook. So that's like the concentrate. If it's a really strong phrase, you can build something around that foundation. Sometimes it's just a melody that I will sing into my voice note. Sometimes it'll be a guitar riff. Sometimes I'll just play along to some chord progressions or something, and words will pop out. So again, when you get rid of the expectation of the end result and live in that mystery, that's where I enjoy it. Right now, I'm trying to work on a bridge of a song, and I can hear where it goes sonically with the music and the notes, but I don't know lyrically where it's going to go. So essentially what I'll do is I'll play up into that point a couple different times, and maybe that time where I play into it, when I hit the bridge, something will come out. Okay, well, that feels right. It's just about navigating that space and being open. That, I guess, is my main process when it comes to music.
Chris, what do you see as your next goals? Number one, as an actor, and I think you just answered as a musician, because you said you want to get an album this year. But as an actor, what are the next goals that you have for yourself?
So I would like to be a part of a really good series, TV series. That's something that I would like to have manifest in my life. I have a project coming out. It'll either be the end of this year or the beginning of next year. So hopefully that gets received well. It's called The Big Cigar. It's about Huey P. Newton, leader of the Black Panthers in the 1970s, and these kind of Hollywood producers and stars trying to smuggle him out of the U.S. to Cuba. So from that standpoint, I'm very excited about that project. And in other news, I'm just waiting to see kind of how the industry comes through. I'm not worried about it. Onward, upward. The right projects come to me at the right time. So when it comes to acting, again, process remains the same. The right ones always pick me. And so we'll navigate that way. Music, yes. Hopefully an album, or at least some more singles this year. And other than that, just absorbing as much information as possible when it comes to carpentry and things like that, and just enjoying the summertime.
Chris, if you get that job, will you have to then at that point for a TV series move back to LA?
It depends. I would love the details of that job to take place. I would love to do a Western. I would love for it to take place in Santa Fe or Albuquerque. That would be awesome. That would be my manifestation. If I get back to LA or New York or Canada, if they want to, pay me to live out there and play out there, I'm down. Again, I've got best case scenarios, but I'm very fluid. So
Chris, you mentioned Canada a couple times. Have you filmed in Canada? And normally, where would that take place? Toronto?
I was in Vancouver,
Oh.
Toronto, and in BC. We were in the mountains, and I forget exactly where that was. So I've been to Canada on 3 separate occasions filming out there. I filmed The Big Cigar out there. I filmed a show called The Magicians out there, and then I filmed Recon out there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we are going to switch now, Chris. We're gonna move away from your career a little bit.
Perfect.
And this next segment is called the Packed Questions segment. And this is just a little bit, just diving quick, rapid fire questions at you. Okay. What's your favorite hobby outside of work?
Camping. Love camping.
Camping at 20 below zero in Antarctica?
Hey, like I said, wherever camping takes me, I'll take it. No, in New Mexico, we've got some pretty sweet little secret spots out here that I'm very much looking forward to spending some decent amount of time in the summer.
No mosquitoes at 20 below zero too, right?
No mosquitoes over there for sure. Nothing.
Chris, what's your biggest fear?
I think just having a moment if you realized you didn't show up to the best of your ability, like that you could have done more. I think that realizing that is a sobering thought.
What's your favorite place that you've ever traveled to? And sounds like you've been in a lot of pretty cool places.
I'm gonna have to say Antarctica. That'll have to be the one.
You'll have to write a song about it.
I know that's fair enough. I'll have to figure out what's the essence of it.
Hey, don't forget that was my idea.
Yeah, well, technically, if you see it ever come out, you own 50% now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you said
works.
You said we only get 50% of the 50% then, right?
It depends on music. Yeah, it just depends. Different time.
And what's the best piece of life advice that Chris Brochu has ever received?
My dad told me one time, it's not about making mistakes because you're going to make mistakes. It's how you deal with your mistakes. And I like that. And I've lived my life by that.
And now I'm gonna lap in or circle around with the last two. What's your favorite movie? Not that you've been in, but to watch.
Yeah, exactly. I always go back to Tombstone. I love Tombstone.
So you like the old Westerns, huh?
I like the old Westerns, it's true.
Well, son of a gun, we should be watching you on Yellowstone then, right?
I know. I auditioned for 1883. We'll see what other spinoff of it I can get in for.
Well, they keep doing it. Hopefully they're listening to this podcast, right?
All right, fingers crossed.
And then from your music career, who's your favorite band or artist?
You know what? I think Sam Cooke is my favorite artist. Just soul music. Can't go wrong with it.
Beautiful. And Chris? We thank you so much for being here today. Folks, today our very special guest has been Chris Brochu. He's an American actor. He's an American songwriter. I'll tell you, I learned so much today, Chris. I just thank you for being here. I mean, holy cow. Listen to this. I mean, Soul Surfer, Vampire Diaries, NCIS Los Angeles, CIS New York, Shameless, Recon, Station 19, Zero Contact. You've been all over the place. Congratulations on your success, and thank you for being here.
I appreciate you having me. I enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully one of these days get up to do some hunting with you at some point.
Well, I'll tell you what, since you're not afraid of the cold, 9 months of the year, you can come up here and be with us.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Sounds good.
Perfect. God bless. And folks, until next time, unplug from the indoors and recharge in the outdoors.